Hi folks, thank you for inviting me to present about emergency management intelligence. My name is Mike Prasad and I am the Executive Director of the Center for Emergency Management Intelligence Research. We advocate for the curation, the collection, analysis, and sharing of emergency management intelligence on incidents of scale, and before and after. All hazards, all the time. So what exactly is emergency management intelligence, or EMINT? It's more than information and is sourced both internally and externally. And while it should be analyzed within the emergency management construct, meaning steady state operational groupings beyond or above law enforcement, such as public safety, it needs to be embedded within the Response Recovery Incident Command System, or ICSs, as activated. We advocate for the distribution to everyone who needs it, not just operational units. Here are some highlights of the major differences between groupings, terms, etc. in the civilian incident response world in the United States. At the CEMIR, we believe in full cycle all hazards incident management as part of an overall emergency management, and with an organizational priority list, which originated in the fire service, the LIP. We believe every tactic, every operational mission, etc. needs to follow the life safety, incident stabilization, and then property asset protection priority list, and that EMINT can help. Here's an example of where we see differences between the current state of situational awareness and the potential benefits of emergency management intelligence. This is a fire service example for an evacuation scenario incident, a multifamily home fire with the potential impacts to neighboring residential buildings. As you most likely know from your fire service training, there are a number of other missions besides putting out the fire, and that situational awareness is needed for when these are open or when there are open or unmet needs. There's also emergency management intelligence items which would be helpful, especially for life safety, to know beforehand or as soon as possible. Here's a list of just a few. And here's a fire service shelter-in-place incident scenario. Did emergency responders on scene have all of the situational awareness for their own life safety? Were they aware of impacts elsewhere, such as major traffic delays and power loss in other communities caused by this incident? For me, there were some significant EMINT items that I was unaware of related to downed, energized lines and how they can cause fires inside of homes through the underground pipes. At the CEMIR, we call these pink slices. What you don't know, you don't know. And we try to help practitioners shrink those pink slices. Also, this specific example had a set of neighbors who do not speak English, so any type of public warnings to either shelter in place or to evacuate in specific directions, etc., would not have worked to these folks. Crisis communications to the public is a critical element of emergency management intelligence. Finally, an example of both situations, or either sheltering in place and/or evacuating. These are some of the preparedness or pre-incident work which needs situational awareness and EMINT to make the potential responses and recovery work better. As you can see, there are both situational awareness items to check off, as well as emergency management intelligence items to check off. Fire service and emergency medical missions both have inputs and output needs from EMINT, and hopefully we've been successful in describing how it's more than just situational awareness. This network structure around EMINT covers many more adjunct and collaborative groups, including, of course, law enforcement and homeland security, but also healthcare and others. As noted in our examples, weather intelligence impacts everyone, everywhere. We believe situational awareness is not enough, and in the United States in civilian usage, it's a unit underneath the planning section. Intelligence and investigation is defined as causality focused, with specific missions and actions for law enforcement and homeland security, generally only. At the CEMIR, we're advocating for change both from the top down, meaning changes at the US and other countries' federal levels down, and also from the bottom up, from the targeted emergency management groupings, such as the fire service. A growth mindset is needed. That means at the CEMIR, we need to help local organizations adopt and adapt EMINT without additional staffing or costs, as best we can. EMINT is also going to be controversial in that it really builds much more bridges between the US federal intelligence community through to local emergency management. While this bridge may exist from the IC through to local law enforcement, there are privacy issues, civil rights, etc., which must be transparent to the public in their use for the support of the LIP only when it comes to EMINT. And finally, there's way too much information flowing out there, even if that information is subject to its own threats and hazards. More reasons why the curation needs to be performed by a separate group, directly under the Command and Control, or C2. ICS courses today barely cover I&I, and leave its positioning up to C2, rather than pre-establishing as an all hazards, all cycles role, as are all of the other general staff positions now. While some jurisdictions may be departmentalized or units of existing larger organizations within a silo of excellence, for example, most fire departments have their own fleet services, separate and different from, say, their departments of public works vehicles or their police vehicles. This is generally the case in most state, local, tribal, and territories, SLTTs, and also at the federal agencies and department levels. While the GSA may provide some logistical common support across federal agencies day to day, each agency and department, whether they have a mission essential function or not, has their own logistical functions themselves for steady state and also disaster state. This is part of their continuity of operations, continuity of government. It's a different presentation and a different rabbit hole to describe how steady state operations move into disaster state operations for each agency and department at any level of government. Here's what we are proposing for local communities to implement as their incident command system. The standard command and general staff positions still remain the same, but the idea of law enforcement, intelligence, and investigations can either be underneath operations and within their own oversight and alignment with other organizations and entities within operations, other operational tasks, and then have a dotted line connection to a new intelligence branch, or report directly to that intelligence branch. The incident type and threat will probably dictate how this organization gets structured. Arson investigations, for example, need to be coordinated with operational units, those still putting out the fire, flare-ups, etc. But if this is a series of arson incidents occurring simultaneously, it might be better to have that unit reporting directly under intelligence. This still needs to be exercised and researched as to the best practices. The CEMIR will look to the best practices in other countries, as well as to our own military and corporate crisis management constructs, as those incorporate intelligence within their own ICS. So here is our contact information. Feel free to reach out to us if you would like our help and/or our advice in establishing emergency management intelligence in your organization. Thank you again for your time and seeing what the Center for Emergency Management Intelligence Research is all about. Take care.